is about really sort of embodying this idea of indigeneity, the indigenous folks with whom we are in collaboration in the best case scenario, and also our own ancestries that we bring, our own indigenous ancestries that we bring as we travel and as we land in the different places that we land. So in a way, this workshop is about that acknowledgement, is an extension of that acknowledgement of exploring this idea of what are the legacies we carry and what are the legacies we leave behind. How do we carry those in our body, in our bones, in our breath, in our voice? How do we carry those legacies and bring our awareness to those legacies so that we can enter into relationships on a deep level and on ancestral level, but also looking deep into each other's eyes. The Arrivals work, I often describe it as sneaking under each other's borders, giving us an opportunity to see beyond the beyond or whatever. That's just a wee introduction. So what I'd like to do, this is a hands-on workshop, so the idea is that we will get hands-on, or feet on, as it were. So we'll navigate the space, which is long and narrow. But I wanted to take some time to just offer up a sort of critical framework from which this work has sort of been derived. And I do that now because I've just recently started my PhD to study this work. It started about 15 years ago, actually longer than that. I was teaching at the University in Montreal, where I'm now doing my PhD. And I was teaching an intro to acting class. And I knew that I would be working with students that came from all over the world, just because of the nature of the program. I was also working with students who weren't necessarily committed to the idea of acting, so everybody had to take this class. They were designers, etc. So I wanted to create an exercise that would be meaningful to those who weren't going to continue on as performers, how to source their own histories and stories within themselves. And the other part, or the other reason for creating this exercise is that I went to theatre school here in Toronto at York University, and I was the only Black woman, only Black person in the program for many of the years that I was doing my training. And the training wasn't for me. I mean, it actually was despite me, you know, so I wanted to create an environment where people actually felt like it was a somewhat equal playing ground. I wanted to sort of get rid of the sort of assumed Eurocentric center and start from what if we're all just walking on our feet into a space and trying to meet each other, soul to soul, face to face, voice to voice, body to body. And so I created this exercise, and it was just meant to be a 3-unit exercise that was, I asked them to research an ancestor about 3 generations away, and to use, there's a standard character exercise that actors use to break down characters, so we use that as an outline to start. And I've developed it since, but they would do research into this ancestor, deep research, and part of that was looking into archives. So study the ancestor in the historical moment or time that they lived in to understand the archival knowledge that they might glean from the time that their ancestor lived, but also to interview family members about the details. And the questions on this outline weren't about, well, where did they live? They were some of those questions were there because we needed facts. But there were things like, what do you, when I'm afraid, what do I, there's ways of interviewing family members. There's ways of finding stories that are not necessarily direct ways. They had to navigate the resistances in the family that might come up to, why do you want to know that? We don't talk about that person, And the choosing of the ancestor became a really important thing. So I would say, choose your ancestor, and they would say, oh, well, I know this person. I know a lot about them because our family has books and pictures, excuse me, but I don't know very much about this person, but that person really, I saw this picture once, and I'd say, yeah, go for that person. And they say, but wait, I don't know anything. So this idea of knowing, I need to know things, in order to be able to do this work. But the work itself, the way that it has developed and was birthed, has been based on this sense of not knowing. So what don't we know? And how do we step into that space of not knowing and navigate where that knowing actually arrives, how and where that knowing arrives. So they did their exercise, they did their interviews, they developed their character profile, and then they came into the space. And I told them that I would like you to present 5 minutes of a compelling moment in this ancestor's life, but I don't want you to tell the story, blah, 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 the story. I want you to create an environment using 3 objects, up to 3 objects, and maybe up to 3 words, and that's all. So I gave them parameters and restrictions to work within. And so they chose this moment, and they would embody this moment for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And what was really profound about that was that they actually found a deeper understanding of themselves by doing this. By trying to find where the story lives in their bodies, by trying to find what that compelling moment is, and it was really specific. We had to go the day, the hour, the minute, the second, that breath of decision when I decide to leave home, or I'm stepping off the ship into, that first step, the opening the door, the closing of the door when I know that I'm never going to see my loved one again. So really, really specific and a charged emotional moment. And then they would sit in that for the length of time. It was 5, 10, 15 minutes. And then they would make discoveries. The other part of it was that we would have half the class on the floor doing this exercise, and the other half would witness. So this idea of the role of the witness, how do we see and capture story in others? So there's a training around that, how to deeply witness each other's process. And as we're going through the process and we're starting to witness ourselves and the openings and the breath and the whatever happens, we start to witness it in others, and we start to recognize in others when something's coming through. So I call the final stage of the work the embodiment of the ancestor. Hi, Nadia. Yeah, welcome. Thank you. So there are 6 stages that we go through now as we do the training in the workshops let me back up one step. So we do these workshops. I conduct these workshops now, working not only with students, I still work with students sometimes, but I work with artists, and usually the artists that are attracted to this work and the artists that I tend to look for are Indigenous or racialized artists, and usually coming from any discipline. They come into the workshop, and the first level of workshop is a 5-day workshop. Melissa did the workshop, I think, that I did here. Well, I know you did the workshop, but I think the workshop was 2 years ago. Yeah, 2-3 years ago?
Yes, 2017, I think.
Right, yeah. So, so I do workshops that the duration is about 40 hours in about 5 days, and we explore our ancestors. And then there's another level of work where I do residencies with artists who want to take what they discovered in the workshop and take it deeper and move on. Let me just see if I can. Voice breadth of ancestrality. So my recent work, and I promise not to get all geeky on you on this, but my recent work has started to think about these values as a trio of values. So now there's ancestrality, which contains these sub-values, and I'm calling them values now. Ancestrality is a value, and kinship and autonomy is connected to that. So this idea of how are we both kin of our ancestors, but also kin to each other, kin to the environment, but also autonomous. And then I mapped with communality this idea of reciprocity and reflexivity. So this idea of communality, so this idea of what does it mean to be in communal space, and what is that reflexive and reciprocal relationship. And then the third one is adaptation, which sometimes changes to affirmation. I think you went between the two. Adaptation. And with that, I've mapped the values of truth and responsibility. And I'm particularly drawn to that, especially today, because there's a whole, especially in the education system, there's a whole new thing about safety and triggers and, you know, and this thing of truth and responsibility. How do we hold the responsibility for our own triggers, our own whatever, you know, what moves us, what makes us recoil, how do we hold that and also speak from this place of truth as well. So anyway, those are just some things that I'd love to just sort of leave with you, little queries, and I had little visual aids. Just be aware of the exposure of your neck. It's almost as if there's an eye on your neck that is seeing the person across the circle. So it's like you're exposing your throats to the person on the opposite, in the opposite place of the circle. And breathing from those feet, from the little mouths. Just a sound or and slowly bringing your face back to the center of the circle, and we'll meet each other's eyes. And one person steps into the middle of the circle and offers a gesture. We slap our thighs. We stamp our feet. We let it grow. We let it hang. And we start from the beginning. We look to the sky or the ceiling. We expose our throats to the neighbor or to the fire in the middle of the circle. Breathing from our feet, the sound, the song, question, sigh, whisper. We return our eyes to the middle of the circle and meet each other's eyes. One person steps into the middle of the circle and offers a gesture.
And we're starting with this lover relationship between our feet and the earth below. So experiment with those little mouths. Feel the little mouths on the insides of your feet. Feel the little mouths on the outside of your feet. On your heels, on your toes. Walk through your whole foot. Yeah. Bring your awareness to your ankles.
Brothers and sisters in Africa, never should we learn to wage war against each other. Let Nigeria be a lesson to all. We have more to learn.
Bring your awareness to your shin. What we're trying to do is we're trying to wake up. Wake up where memories, stories might live, in the joints, flowing through our blood. Bring your awareness to your hips. So there's a little problem here between your feet and your